He was born with rhythm in his soul, a kid who could dance before he could even walk, a voice so smooth it could melt pain, and a smile that could light up the stage. The world saw a prodigy, the next Michael Jackson, the future of R&B. But behind the spotlight, a storm was brewing. Fame came too fast, love turned to chaos, and one night changed everything. From teenage idol to public enemy, his name became both celebrated and cursed. How does a man rebuild his soul after destroying everything he loved? How does he find redemption when the whole world refuses to forgive? This is not just the story of a superstar. It's the story of a boy from a small town in Virginia who rose, fell, and fought his way back through the ashes. A journey of talent, tragedy, and transformation. Because sometimes, it takes losing everything to discover who you truly are. This is the story of Chris Brown. Before the lights, before the headlines, there was a small town called Tappahannock, Virginia. A place so quiet you could hear the river breathe. That's where Christopher Maurice Brown was born on May 5, 1989. His childhood was far from easy. His father, a correctional officer, kept long hours, while his mother worked to make ends meet. But what hurt most wasn't poverty. It was the violence. Chris grew up watching his mother suffer at the hands of an abusive boyfriend. Every scream, every broken night, it carved something deep inside him. When most kids were playing outside, Chris was in his room, mimicking the moves of Michael Jackson, or singing along to Stevie Wonder on an old cassette player. Music became his shield, his escape, his language. At church, people would stop and stare. That little boy with the big voice. At school, he was the quiet kid who came alive only when there was rhythm. Even then, people around him knew there was something special. A spark in his eyes, a fire in his movement. But he didn't dream of fame. He dreamed of freedom. Freedom from pain, from fear, from being invisible. That dream would soon take him far from Virginia's calm fields, into the roaring lights of the music world. And at just 13 years old, destiny would come knocking. Opportunity often hides in the most unexpected places. And for Chris Brown, it came in the form of a visitor walking into his mother's small convenience store. The man was a local talent scout from New York. He'd heard rumors of a kid who could sing like an angel and dance like the devil. When he saw Chris perform, raw and fearless, he knew immediately. This boy was different. At just 13, Chris was taken to New York City, a place that felt like another planet compared to the quiet back roads of Tappahannock. The skyscrapers, the noise, the energy. It was overwhelming, but exhilarating. Soon after, he was introduced to executives from Jive Records, the same label that had launched Britney Spears and Usher. They saw the spark too. Within months, Chris Brown signed his first major record deal. Then came the moment that changed everything. His debut single, Run It, a song that exploded across radio stations, music video channels, and teenage hearts around the world. Chris wasn't just another singer, he was a phenomenon. His moves were electric, his confidence unshakable, his talent undeniable. By the age of 16, he had his first Billboard #1 hit, a platinum album, and the world at his feet. But success, as it often does, came faster than wisdom. The cameras never turned off, the fans never stopped screaming, and the world began to shape his identity before he even understood who he was. Behind every smile on stage, there was still that boy from Virginia, chasing a dream, trying to fill the silence that once haunted his home. And as his fame soared, so did the stakes. Because the higher you rise, the harder you can fall. By 2007, Chris Brown wasn't just a star. He was a movement. Every step, every spin, every note seemed to defy gravity. His second album, Exclusive, turned him from a teenage sensation into a global powerhouse. Hits like Kiss Kiss, Forever, and With You dominated charts, filled arenas, and turned him into a heartthrob for a new generation. He could sing, he could dance, he could act, the full package. In a world that constantly searched for the next Michael Jackson, Chris seemed to be the answer. He wasn't imitating greatness, he was evolving it. A performer who could glide across the floor 1 second and pour his soul into a love song the next. But fame doesn't come without a cost. Every photo, every word, every move became public property. And in the middle of it all, he found love with another rising superstar, Rihanna. Two of the biggest names in the world, young and unstoppable, deeply in love. Their chemistry was magnetic, on stage, in interviews, and behind closed doors. They were music's golden couple, the fairy tale of pop and R&B. But behind the glamour, the pressure was building. Both were young, both carrying the weight of fame, both trying to survive under the microscope of millions. Their relationship was passionate, creative, but volatile. Two shooting stars colliding. As his fame grew, so did the whispers. Rumors of temper, jealousy, and exhaustion. Chris was everywhere, performing at award shows, touring the world, recording non-stop. He was chasing perfection, but losing peace. And then, in early 2009, everything changed. One night would shatter everything he had built. One decision, one act, would turn the world against him. The boy who could dance through pain was about to face the hardest music of his life. February 8, 2009, the night before the Grammys. The world expected to see Chris Brown and Rihanna shining on the red carpet, two young stars at the peak of fame. But instead, headlines broke with a nightmare no one saw coming. A violent altercation, a police report, a photo that would haunt him forever. The image of Rihanna's bruised face spread across the globe in hours, and just like that, the golden boy of R&B became its villain. Fans were shocked. Brands cut ties. Radio stations banned his music. The same media that once crowned him now tore him apart. The question on everyone's lips wasn't about his next hit. It was whether his career was over. Chris disappeared from the spotlight. Court appearances replaced concerts. The sound of applause turned into silence. He apologized publicly, again and again. But forgiveness doesn't come easily, especially when the world feels betrayed. For months, he became a symbol of everything ugly about fame, power, and violence. Behind closed doors, he was broken. The guilt, the shame, the anger at himself. "I felt like a monster," he would later admit. "I hated who I'd become." He entered counseling, anger management, community service, trying to rebuild not just his image, but his humanity. It was no longer about music, it was about survival. For the first time, Chris Brown wasn't the kid with the golden voice. He was a man facing the consequences of his own actions. And in that darkness, he had to decide who he truly wanted to be. Redemption doesn't happen overnight. It's not a headline. It's a quiet battle. One fought in the mirror, day after day. For Chris Brown, the years after 2009 were about healing, discipline, and rediscovering the purpose behind his gift. He went through therapy, anger management, community service, and perhaps more importantly, he faced himself. The world wasn't ready to forgive him, but forgiveness, he learned, had to start within. Then came the music. In 2011, he released FAME, short for Forgiving All My Enemies. It wasn't just an album. It was a statement, a declaration that he was no longer running from his past. The world listened, cautiously at first. But songs like Yeah 3X, She Ain't You, and Look at Me Now brought back the fire. The same passion, but with a new layer of maturity. And when FAME won the Grammy Award for Best R&B Album, it marked one of the most unlikely comebacks in music history. Chris was back, but different. He poured his emotions into his art, painting, dancing, performing like a man reborn. He collaborated with artists like Nicki Minaj, Tyga, and Justin Bieber, proving that creativity could still triumph over controversy. Yet the shadows never fully disappeared. Every step forward came with reminders of the past. But this time he faced them with humility, not defiance. He once said, "I'm not perfect. I'm not who I was. I'm just trying to be better." It wasn't the redemption story of Hollywood fantasy. It was the slow, painful evolution of a man learning to rebuild himself, not as a star, but as a human being. Say what you will about Chris Brown, but you cannot erase his impact. He has sold over 140 million records worldwide, won more than 100 awards, and inspired an entire generation of performers who grew up watching him glide across the stage like liquid lightning. His music reshaped R&B for a new era, blending pop, hip-hop, and soul into something electrifying and unpredictable. Artists like The Weeknd, Bryson Tiller, Usher, and Jason Derulo have all cited him as an influence. Even his fiercest critics admit, few can sing, dance, and create like Chris Brown. Every time he steps on stage, it feels less like performance and more like confession. The rhythm becomes therapy, the movement becomes redemption, and the audience, many of whom once judged him, can't help but feel that spark again. But his legacy is not simple. It's a reflection of both brilliance and brokenness, the light and the darkness that shaped him. He stands as one of the most talented yet most controversial artists of his generation. To some, he's a symbol of wasted potential. To others, he's proof that people can change. Maybe that's the truth of legacy. It's never clean, never perfect. It's the echo of who we were and who we fought to become. Chris Brown's story will always divide opinions, but his art, his voice, his movement, his fire, continues to move the world, beat after beat. As the years passed, the noise began to fade. The scandals, the headlines, the endless judgment. They never disappeared, but they no longer defined him. What changed everything was love. Not romantic love this time, but the love of a father for his daughter. When Royalty Brown was born in 2014, Chris said it was like seeing the world in color for the first time. Suddenly, the man who once couldn't control his anger was learning patience, one bedtime story at a time. He found peace not on stage, but in quiet moments, painting, dancing in his studio, watching cartoons with his little girl. He began using his art as therapy, channeling pain into creativity. His concerts became celebrations of resilience. His paintings, vivid, chaotic, beautiful, told the story of a man who had lived through fire and learned how to create light from it. He started giving back, donating to youth programs, supporting domestic violence awareness groups, mentoring young artists who were trying to find their voice. In interviews, he spoke softly, not defensively. "I've made mistakes," he said, "but I don't want to be remembered for them. I want to be remembered for how I grew. There are still critics, still shadows, but there is also growth, humility, and love." Chris Brown, once the prodigy who lost control, now stands as a man still learning, still evolving. Proof that redemption isn't a moment. It's a lifetime of choices. In the end, Chris Brown's story is not about perfection. It's about contradiction, the brilliance and the brokenness that live within the same soul. He rose higher than anyone imagined and fell harder than anyone expected. But from the wreckage, he built something else: understanding. Through music, fatherhood, and time, he learned what fame could never teach: humility, forgiveness, and grace. His journey reminds us that people are not the worst thing they've ever done. They're the lessons they choose to learn from it. And sometimes, the road to redemption doesn't begin with applause. It begins with silence. Today, when the lights hit the stage and Chris moves again, you can see it. The same fire but tempered by wisdom. The same rhythm but now carrying peace. Because every story of downfall deserves a chance to rise again. And maybe that's what makes him human. Not the fame, not the hits, but the courage to keep dancing after the world tried to stop the music. This is the story of Chris Brown, the boy who fell, the man who rose, and the artist who never stopped moving to the beat of redemption.